Coco's POV. What? Are you hungry? You must be hungry. You've been working for hours. You deserve a break. I packed my lunch. I have a sandwich in my bag. Having a conversation with Nolan is like opening a surprise package. You never know what he's going to say next, and he seems to love throwing me off balance. From being bossy and demanding to caring about whether I've had lunch. That's not going to do any good. I'm not going to lunch with you if that's what you're asking. Let me see. What? Your lunch. You are turning down my offer of lunch for yours. I want to see it. With trembling fingers, I reached for the bag on the desk and retrieved my sodded sandwich. He snatched it and examined it with a frown before tossing it into the trash can. Have lunch with me. This is trouble, and I have enough of that right now to ask for more. I'm trying to protect my heart from the father of my child, who really has to decide whether he hates me. He keeps blowing hot and cold on me. One moment he is protecting his relationship from me, and the next minute he's caring about whether I've had lunch, tossing my sandwich in the trash and offering me lunch. We can't do this, Nolan. We both don't want this. Want what? He moved closer. I took a step back. You feel it too, don't you? We were young idiots our first time, but you can't deny that the second time would be better. Hotter. Hell, it might consume us both. He's talking about sex like it's a casual topic at dinner. My silly heart started to beat with trepidation and excitement. I am physically attracted to him, no doubt. Come on, he's hot. His chest and shoulders filled his shirt to perfection, his waist tapered down to lean hips and strong muscular thighs. I'd be blind not to notice the raw sex appeal. He kept coming closer one step at a time. I moved back until my back came up to the solid shelf behind me. No escape. He stopped. Now that he was right in front of me, he crossed his hands in front of his chest and cocked his head. The way his eyes swept my body had my legs suddenly trembling. I let out a breath trying to calm my beating heart. I always thought you were the sexiest girl to ever walk this earth. After all these years, I'm still not wrong. You have a fiancé. I know. His voice was like rich wine, and I was getting drunk off words falling from those sexy lips. The office suddenly seemed too small for both of us. He moved in again and dipped his head. He's not going to kiss me again, is he? No, he can't. I have made mistakes before, I am done with making them. With as much strength as I could muster, I reached for the file on my desk. He didn't move, so I stretched to retrieve it all the while his eyes remained on my face. I have things to do, Nolan. My voice shook as much as my fingers as I turned to find a place on the shelf for the file. Suddenly, strong fingers curved around my waist, pushing me even further against the shelf. I struggled to stifle the moan that threatened to escape my throat. My body yearns to be touched by this man, but my brain knows it is wrong. Now if my brain and body would just cooperate, I'd be fine. His body pressed hotly against mine. His torso leaned into my back and I felt his erection, hard enough to bludgeon someone with. Warm breath fell on my skin as he nuzzled my neck, his fingers caressing my waist, moving across my belly to hold me closer to the front of his body. You want this as much as I do. You wanted me when you first saw me in Penelope's office. Don't deny it. I do too. You don't know that. I argued. He kissed my neck, then my ear. When his tongue traced the curve of my ear, I rubbed myself against him, wishing he would give his fingers the freedom they craved. When he lifted those beautiful green eyes to my face, I felt the urge to throw up for my foolishness. You still think we shouldn't? He asked. I heard the laughter in his voice. His question was like cold water in winter. Shameful tears rose in my eyes, blurring my vision. My bunched-up gown mercifully fell to my knees to cover my shame. It was all a game to him. To prove I wanted him. To prove I lied. To satisfy his male ego. And just like I'm back to being an idiot. A million bites aren't enough for me to learn from my mistakes. Clearly. My voice was small. I couldn't believe it was coming from me. You got what you wanted. I'm an idiot. His shadow fell over me. When he reached for me, I shrank back, too disgusted with myself to face him. He wasn't having it. Hooking the fingers of his clean hand beneath my chin, he lifted my face until I finally looked into his eyes. He was sucking my wetness off his fingers. He grinned. "You still don't get it, do you?" Teardrops rolled down my cheeks. His fingers wiped them softly. "This is wrong. I don't know what you want. Do you hate me or not? You have a fiancé, yet you kiss and touch me like I mean more to you than anything else, than you." I choked on my words. "Did you really hire me to blackmail me?" He withdrew his fingers and dropped his hand by his side. "I think that's my business to know." "I deserve to know. I'm the one you're using, I'm the one with something to lose, and I'll die before I lose myself again. What do you want, Nolan? You can't have me when you already have a fiancé who hates me as much as I hate her. You have to make up your mind." He scoffed. "I need to make up my mind? You need to decide what you want. You love my kisses, you melt into my arms like you want me, yet when you're not sighing and moaning into my mouth you act like we are strangers like you did years ago, even though I frowned. "Even though you what? Was that a slip-up?" He waved my question away with a dismissive hand. "Forget about it. You are right. It appears we both need to make up our minds. You need to decide what you want. Maybe then I can tell you what I want." He ran his fingers through his hair and let out an exasperated breath. "Meanwhile, put yourself together. We have a dinner invitation tonight. Be ready at 7. Is it work-related? Today is my last day so." But just like that, he turned on his heels and marched out, leaving me watching the door replaying our conversations in my head. Every word has a double meaning with him, and I was struggling over time to understand him. I'm not the one who needs to make a decision. He's the one going behind his fiancé's back kissing her enemy, and I'm the one doing the very thing said fiancé did years ago. Hypocrite much. I reached for the chair and dropped heavily on it. Dinner at 7, just like that. As if he wasn't just toying with my brain a few minutes ago. The sooner today ends, the better for me. I can finally retreat to the Chantel I was before he walked back into my life. Nolan was already waiting beside the car when I got out. The offices along the hall were locked. Only a few remained open with tired, drowsy workers inside. The private park was flooded with light, and since Nolan stood directly under one of them, his face was partially shadowed. His green eyes watched me as I walked quickly toward him. He moved to the passenger side and held the door open for me. I averted my gaze as I slid into the seat. How ironic, he used to be the one averting his gaze, years ago, at the slightest attempt at a conversation, yet here I am looking away and him staring intently at me. He closed my door and went to the driver's side of the car. The car smelled like him, male and expensive. There was a faint musty smell too. He had just settled down when he turned sharply to the right and peered into a shadowed corner of the park. I followed his gaze and noticed the dark figure standing against the wall at the other end. As Nolan backed out of the lot, the figure moved into the light. It was Bob. He crumpled a styrofoam coffee cup in his hands as he walked slowly across the park. "Was he stalking you?" I asked with a rising feeling of unease. "Never mind, Bob," Nolan responded dismissively. He looked away and locked eyes with me. "Are you good?" I nodded, looking away from his intense stare. He eased into the light traffic. I could feel his eyes on me as he drove. He cleverly slid his right hand from the steering wheel to my thigh, which he squeezed, before leaning over to open the glove compartment. He was all but screaming his intentions from the rooftops. He pulled out a pack of cigarettes and eyed me from the corner of his eyes. "That explains the musty smell." "You don't mind, do you?" he asked. I shrugged. "As long as you roll down the windows." Soon he was puffing out clouds of smoke out of the window. "Why do you smoke?" I found myself asking. "It helps me clear my head. A habit I picked up at college." "What thoughts are you trying to clear off your head?" He fell silent, then looked away from me only to focus on me again. "Never mind that. What happened to your friendship with Lorraine?" I may hate Lorraine, but I'm not bitchy enough to destroy her image in front of her fiancé. It doesn't matter whether said fiancé was feeling up my panties a few hours ago. We fell out of friendship. End of story. He chuckled, puffed more smoke, and stubbed the burning end of the cigarette into a neat ashtray I hadn't even noticed before. Once again, he slid his hand on my thigh and left it there. He wasn't being covert about his intentions, and, I will be honest with myself, I want him as much as he wants me. I just need to stop being a coward and make up my mind. His fingers traced patterns on my skin, slowly making their way higher up. If I didn't want him, I would have slapped his hand off. Yet, here I am pretending I still haven't made up my mind. But even though Nolan's actions showed what he really wanted, it still only half explained why he hired me when his claim to that was to have his enemy close. I shifted in my seat and let his hand fall. He sighed. Whatever you think, Coco, I didn't disarrange the office today. I would never put you through any kind of stressful task. He looked at me as he talked. His left hand still expertly drove the car along the partially deserted road. You know me, you know the Nolan I used to be. I never changed. So why do you chase me when you are engaged? That's something the Nolan I know wouldn't do. A pained look entered his eyes. That Nolan wouldn't do that because he is a fool. His features were set in stone and his fingers flexed and clutched the wheel tight. Something about my question must have upset him. Needing to calm him down, I reached over and clutched his right hand in mine. He looked down, turned my hand in his, and interlaced our fingers. A few minutes later, he pulled up to a private lot adjacent to a condominium. We parted hands long enough to get out of the car, but he came around my side of the car to take my hand in his again. Together, we walked to a private elevator. A business meeting? I asked, looking around at the impressive environment. If this was a business meeting, I doubt his clients would be thrilled to see him hold hands with his secretary. Nolan pressed a buzzer. A pleasure meeting. Matt Wolf is a friend. My eyes stretched wide. We are meeting with Matt Wolf? I squealed. You didn't say so. I'm not dressed formally enough. He took one look at me, his eyes turning hungry as they swept me up and down. My body turned warm, my nipples tightened at the look in his eyes, and my worry was temporarily forgotten. You look perfect. I got the impression he wasn't talking about my outfit. With a tug of his hand, we entered the elevator and rode up to the penthouse. The doors opened to reveal the most impressive interior decor I have ever seen. A rug with splashes of pastel pink and blue that matched the abstract pastel paintings on the wall covered every inch of the living room floor. There were impressive paintings of life and abstract paintings. 2 cane chairs occupied a balcony to the right, and the balcony overlooked the city. An electric heater hummed, and soft, slow music played from hidden speakers. From one room came an average-height woman with her thick, dark curls piled high on her head. She was beautiful. She wore a cream dress that was simple yet expensive. I recognized her from the images on magazine pages. Matt Wolf's marriage to Sophia Blanc, now Sophia Wolf, had taken everyone by surprise. Not only was Matt Wolf known as a rogue with a specific type of taste in women, but he was supposedly not the marrying type too. But it looks like it only takes the right woman to change a man, and Sophia Blanc happened to be the woman for Matt Wolf. She had a huge smile on her face when she crossed the room and hugged Nolan, who hugged her back. I'm glad you came, Nal, but you are a bit late. Matthew and I were about to help ourselves to dinner. She was still hugging him when Matt Wolf entered the living room wearing a frown and a simple hand-knitted sweater with a pair of gray sweatpants. The perfect recipe for horny syndrome. I will kick you in the ass if you don't release my wife, he grumbled. Nolan laughed and released Mrs. Wolf, who swatted his hand playfully with a laugh. Don't be so jealous, sweetie. I only have eyes for you, and you know it. She gave him a sultry look that had me wondering just what these two were up to before Nolan and I arrived. Sophia Wolf looked away from her husband long enough to cast me a glance. And this is, she began with a smile, then paused. Her watchful eyes fell to Nolan's fingers closed around mine. I must be mistaken, but it looked like a hint of a smile pushed her already bright smile higher. This is not Lorraine, she concluded meaningfully, then looked at Nolan for an explanation. This is my secretary, Chantel Jones. Chantal, Mr. and Mrs. Wolf. I didn't miss the way Sophia discreetly jabbed her husband's rib. Oh, his secretary, she said in an exaggerated tone. Right. You are welcome, Chantal Jones. She held out her hand and shook mine. Her cheerful character brightened the room. If Nolan noticed the Wolf's reaction to his introduction, he didn't say it. Instead, he continued to introduce the Wolfs. They are friends and second parents to me, even though Matt is only slightly older. He reached out with his free hand and hugged Matt, who patted his back. You look great, old man. Old man? Matt laughed. For the sake of your secretary, I'm going to ignore you tonight. No bantering from me. Please come, Chantal Jones, Sophia said gently, taking my other hand to lead me to the kitchen where a dinner table with a feast was spread out. There was stuffed chicken, potato casserole, pasta with bolognese sauce, and fruits cut up in a side dish. There was also a huge jug of orange juice and wine bottles on the table. Nolan followed Sophia and me, his hand never leaving mine. He raised a brow at Matt, who was pulling out a chair for his wife. You still drink orange juice after what happened? Matt nodded, taking a glass and pouring orange juice into it. He and his wife exchanged a glance. What happened? I asked, feeling left out of the conversation since I was the only one who didn't know what they were talking about. Sophia glanced at Nolan with concern. He shrugged. Chantal is a friend. Both Mr. and Mrs. Wolf's brows shot up dramatically. Of course. Miss Chantal Jones Coco is a friend. They both hid playful smiles and exchanged understanding looks. Neither of them bought into the secretary friend story. Nolan didn't seem too concerned, he was filling my plate and his with food. Well, Miss Chantal. Nolan's dad tried to poison my husband and me with orange juice once to cover up his involvement in my deceased father-in-law's murder. My mouth dropped open, and my gaze flew to Nolan's face. He was shoving bites of food into his mouth like he didn't care, but the whitened knuckles he pressed against the polished table surface told a different story. Well, Sophia said cheerfully. That is in the past now, isn't it, darling? She reached for Matt's hand. He was watching Nolan carefully. Of course it is, he muttered. There was no malice in his voice, but there was something, concern? Nolan, what your father did has nothing to do with you. I'm not holding a grudge over you for the sins of your father. But I am indebted to you anyway. You are the reason I am not on the street. I think you give me too much credit. I'm not beating myself up for my father's sins, so why do that to you? We are both men different from our circumstances. Nolan dropped his fork. Sophia gave her husband a warning look but turned to me with a smile. This was supposed to be a congratulatory dinner since Matt and I couldn't make it to the engagement party, but you know, men, every conversation has to turn morose with them. She gave Nolan a hard look. Actually, that's why I'm here. The engagement? You are not going to do anything stupid, are you? Matt asked in a tight voice. Douglas was merciful enough to consider you after all that your father did to him and everyone else. But I shouldn't have to pay for my father's sins, damn it. It's like you said, I am not my father, and neither are you yours. I can't continue to live a trapped life when... He paused and glanced at me, his eyes sad and telling. I would rather be free. Sophia smacked her lips and exchanged a side glance with her husband. There was a mischievous look on her face, which was slightly reflected in Matt's. Well, let's not talk about this right now, all right? Now is the time to eat. There are other times for heavy discussions such as this. All the conversations at the table raised more questions than answers for me. Nolan was Simone Pierce's son, who was now serving time for killing Matt's dad. And Douglas Grant, where does he come in? I looked at Sophia and Matt for answers, but they both ate their dinner, bringing up one conversation after another. Nolan took my hand under the table and gave it a squeeze. I'll explain after dinner, he promised. But after dinner, he and Matt Wolf went into Wolf's library and spoke in hushed tones. I helped Sophia clear the dishes. Some of the food remained even though Nolan and Matt had eaten most of the pasta. I looked for a way to approach the conversation at the table without sounding nosy. You can ask me anything you know? Sophia Wolf suddenly said out of the blue as she rinsed off one of the plates. For one thing, I'm actually glad that you came in place of Lorraine. I can't promise she wouldn't have left with a broken bone if she had stepped foot into my house. My lips twitched. Not a fan of hers too? Never. She was so friendly and warm that I found myself relaxing. Well then, what was that all about? I asked, referring to the dinner conversation. Nolan is in a better position to tell you about that. And from the looks of it, if he's willing to tell you, he must be serious about you. I tried to deny the meaning of her words. I just work for. How long have you known each other? Her warm brown eyes asked for the truth. Before I knew it, I was telling her about my friendship with Lorraine, the betrayal, and Nolan. I mentioned Nolan, his son. Sophia's eyes widened and she released a deep breath. Wow, she chuckled. This is something straight out of a romance novel. I hugged my arms around myself, not knowing what to think with all that was unfolding in front of me. I know. If I opened myself to Nolan, it would mean risking my son. Sophia's eyes narrowed on me. She chewed on her bottom lip and returned to doing the dishes. It seems you don't know Nolan as much as you think you do. Nolan would never hire you to punish you, nor would he take your son away from you to punish you. But you should talk to him. He is willing to talk to you tonight. I advise you to do the same before it's too late. She looked like she was about to say more, but was interrupted when the men entered the kitchen again. Matt made a beeline for his wife. He was all over his wife as if he had been on a voyage without her, as opposed to being just a room apart from her for 30 minutes. Nolan stood by the door watching the two display some really intense PDA. Then he looked at me. I stifled a shiver at the heat in his eyes. Ready? I nodded. Before we left, Sophia Wolf shook my hand and hugged me. I have a good feeling about you, she whispered before letting go. Nolan was quiet on the ride back to the office where I had left my car, but there was a charge in the air. Something electric sizzling between us, and it had to do with the coziness of the Wolves and the truths I heard tonight. When he took his eyes off the road to glance at me, I didn't look away. How could I? He was such a mystery that I was having a hard time understanding, and dinner tonight added to that mystery. If Sophia Wolf is so sure that Nolan didn't hire me just to keep his enemy close as he claimed, then why? The question gnawed at me as I returned his stare. He looked away for the briefest moment to focus on the road, but he glanced my way again, and this time the heat in his eyes was smoldering. Some minutes later, we pulled into the private parking lot, but neither one of us opened the door to get down. We both sat in our seats waiting for the inevitable. I tried to tell myself that I was still in the process of making up my mind, but my mind was already made up. I knew what I wanted. I knew what I wanted to do. You should go home, Nolan said softly. Both hands remained on the steering wheel. No. My response was firm. I'm tired of dancing around in circles when I knew what I wanted since the day our paths crossed again that day at Penelope's office. There is no going back, he warned. I don't care. He peered closely at me in the dim light of the car. The floodlights around the park barely cast rays into the car's dark interior. When he spoke again, his voice was low, his words measured. You don't think this is a mistake? I stiffened my spine and squared my shoulders. I have made lots of mistakes in the past. I think it's time I started making corrections. I held his gaze squarely when I spoke, so I saw the change that came over him. Whatever resistance he had fell apart. He sucked in a deep breath and looked out of the windshield for a fraction of a second, his nostrils flared with each measured breath that he took. My eyes traveled down to the bulge in his pants. I stared, enthralled by the sheer size of the tented bulge. Stop staring. His voice was strained. Sorry. He smiled and reached for my face, cradling my cheek in his palm. You don't have to apologize, but staring isn't going to make it any easier for me. He indicated his cock. Has a mind of its own, and you have the power to control it. Those words boosted my feminine pride, something that hadn't happened in a long time. I reached out to touch his erection through his pants, but he caught my hand and took my fingers into his mouth instead. "Careful, sweetheart," he said hoarsely, "or I might drag you over me, and it will be over even before it starts." I flashed a coquettish smile. His eyes dropped to my lips. His thumb traced the outline of my mouth carefully, softly. "Let's go upstairs." He was around the side of my door before I could blink. One moment I was watching him struggle to restrain his urges, the next moment my door was being held open by him. He took my hand, and we walked across the park, but once we got to the main door, I decided it was time to take charge again. I dropped his hand and walked in front of him, swaying my hips from side to side. The office building was quiet and empty now. The only people in it were me, him, and the invisible night shift security manning the security cameras. The lobby lights were off, but the lights leading to his office on the top floor were on, so when I sashayed down the hall, swaying my hips seductively for him to see, he stared at my moving hips, distracted by my ass and the swaying skirts of my gown. I half expected him to run up to me, catch me in his arms and fuck me right there in the hall, but when I turned around he was taking slow, precise steps, enjoying the show I put on for him. His restraint was turning me on. My fingers reached for the buttons in front of my dress, but when I started to pop them open, he raised his hand. I stopped walking. "The show doesn't have to end here. You will undress for me in my office." I creamed my panties at the command. His tone was gentle yet firm. In an act of bold defiance, I popped one button to see his reaction. He raised his eyes to me. A corner of his mouth lifted. He wasn't even touching me yet, but I was already shaking in anticipation. Now, this is much better foreplay than the awkwardness shared between two virgins years ago. I returned his smile and turned around to open his office door. The lights were on. With my eyes on him, I walked backward, lifting the hem of my gown as I walked. Nolan's eyes fixed on every bit of exposed flesh. Once he passed the threshold, he swung the door closed so hard that the glass windows shook. He didn't care, his eyes undressed me. Then he stood by the door and crossed his arms. A sudden shyness came over me. Nolan raised a brow. "Carry on. Take it off." Taking a deep breath to calm my pounding heart, I lifted my gown over my head and dropped it on the floor. Green eyes turned to moist pools of desire. Nolan's fingers flexed. He licked his lips, eyes taking in every inch of exposed flesh. His intense gaze made me shy. I was tempted to throw my hands over my body to hide myself, yet no one has ever looked at me this way. I haven't let anyone close enough to see me so unguarded like Nolan. He took a step forward. Then another. He kept moving. "Turn around." His words were an order. His eyes rode down my body to my hips, stopping at the juncture of my thighs. I dropped my hands between them subconsciously and did as he asked. "Bloody hell," he breathed. Warm, large hands covered the globes of my ass. He squeezed them lightly, then groaned and squeezed tighter.